In this module, we'll discuss maps in Codename 1, focusing on Google native maps. And we'll also delve a bit into placing components on top. But first, let's explain the different kinds of maps and why this is so confusing. Currently, the CN1 lib for native maps is based on Google Maps. However, the architecture is generic enough, and this functionality can be ported to Apple Maps, Bing, or other map providers. This would obviously require some work on your part, but the logic within the Maps implementation doesn't include any special code, and one could in theory adapt the CN1 lib to pretty much any other map provider. Currently, we support 4 different map implementations in the CN1 lib. Most of them are based on Google Maps, but not all of them. The iOS implementation uses the native Google Maps API for iOS. The Android implementation uses the standard native Android maps from Google. Then we have 2 fallbacks. The JavaScript fallback uses the browser component to show Google Maps within a browser, and map component can work with either Google Maps or OpenStreetMaps. We considered map component as legacy code and have deprecated it. The original code made a lot of sense in 2012 when tiled maps were still used by providers. But modern map implementations are vector-based and much faster. That's why we promote the JavaScript option as a fallback. On Android or iOS, the native version for the OS is used. If that fails, the fallback is used. The fallback is also used in other platforms such as the simulator, web, etc. Map component is generally a subpar fallback that is too far apart from the native map implementation. On the other hand, the JavaScript maps are closer to the final result. They are officially supported by Google and generally smoother to use. In order to use the maps, you need to obtain keys from Google. This isn't too hard and has been greatly simplified by Google. Notice that Google imposes quotas on map usage, and you might be charged if your app gets significant usage volume. For security, you should always store keys in the server and fetch them upon authentication. This is something I demonstrated in the key service code in the Builder app. However, to keep this code tutorial simple and self-contained, I won't do this here and will include the keys within the source. Since this will use my keys, I won't leave them in the packaged source. You will need to fill out your own keys based on the instructions here. These are the URLs that allow you to create the 3 map keys you will need. 1 for JavaScript, which will be used for fallback. 2nd for Android, and 3rd for iOS. Notice that you can just Google for these URLs, as they might change in the future. The process to generate the key requires that you provide the app package name. Notice that this must match your unique app package. Once this is done, you can install the native maps library from Codename 1 settings under the extensions section. You can do that by pressing the download button and waiting for it to finish. Once download finished, you can right-click the project and select Refresh CN1 lib files, which will finish the installation of the CN1 lib.